Good afternoon. Today is October the 20th, 2025. I hope everyone is doing well. Hope this video catches you doing well. I lift up the trucking community and anyone else who is watching. I pray that God's presence will be known to you in your life. I pray for safety for you on the road, for safety for your families as you're away. I pray for the love and communication in your family, to just excel, and even when it's hard to communicate or find time to communicate, I just pray that that goes well and that your relationships, not only to God but also with your family and your neighbors, and I just pray for God's blessing on those relationships, enrichment in those relationships, and that you'll have fulfillment in what you do and who you are, because you are known and loved by God. And I just pray that that knowledge of God's love will permeate through you, and just shine on those around you. I'm going to be looking at the Gospel of Matthew and just kind of doing an introduction, just kind of talking about who Matthew is and was, talking about the Gospel. The Gospel of Matthew is the first book in the New Testament. There's 4 Gospels account: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And Matthew, Mark, and Luke are known as the synoptic Gospels. They're closely related. If you've read the Gospels, you've noticed that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have a lot of similarities, and John is slightly it's his gospel story, his account of walking with Jesus. But Mark and Luke, or Matthew and Luke, actually used Mark as a baseline to write their gospel accounts, and Matthew and Luke add different things to their gospel account to address the readers that they were writing to. So how do we know that Matthew wrote this gospel account? And I'll have the notes on the screen. So a 2nd century church father named Papias was mentioned that Matthew was the author of this gospel, and it's recorded in an external source. It's his 4th century historian Eusebius, my best way to pronounce that. But so he was one of the early church fathers, was recorded and quoted that Matthew was actually the author. Also, the gospel is highly organized. Matthew was a tax collector, and tax collectors had to be, it was required to be to keep very updated and accurate records, and details were important. Also, with the book of Matthew, he actually used his new name, Matthew, which means gift from God. Now, Mark and Luke uses Matthew's original Hebrew name, Levi, in the account where it talks about Matthew. Also, Matthew's gospel has the most mention about money, which makes sense. His occupation was tax collector. And also, last but not least, this has been the historical stance of the church since the beginning. So that's how we know that Matthew is the actual author of this gospel account. Now, who was Matthew? The calling of Matthew, it's recorded in all 3 gospels. I'll read it as: Jesus went on from there. He saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. So that's the introduction to who, when Jesus approaches Matthew, and that's Matthew's account of his calling to follow Christ. Matthew's methodology in writing this gospel, he wrote to the Jew. He wanted to prove that Jesus was their Messiah. There may very well be times when we read the Bible in a contemporary era with our eyes here in 2025, where we kind of scratch our heads and wonder what this means or why this was inputted into the gospel. But to the Jewish audience of the first century, they would have totally understood what that meant and the significance. Some examples is the first chapter of Matthew. If you're like me, when I was a kid, even a young adult, I would mainly just skip over the first chapter because it talks about so-and-so begot so-and-so begot so-and-so, and the whole chapter deals with the genealogy of Jesus. But to the Jewish audience, this is very important. Also, Jesus' proclamation in Matthew 5, where he says, "Do not think I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." So to the first century Jew, following the law was key. It wasn't it wasn't a choice. It was a obligation to follow the law and the prophets. And they knew exactly what that meant, where maybe we read today in 2025, we read about the law and the prophets, and we might not know, unless we have a good understanding of the Old Testament or Jewish history, we may not know exactly what that means. And last but not least, there's many more, but in Matthew 17, there's mention of Jesus paying the temple tax, which would have been important to the first century Jew. Matthew also mentioned how Jesus fulfilled the scripture. One example of many throughout the New Testament is this. It's in Matthew chapter 2, verses 3 through 6. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people." And that's a quote from the prophet Micah chapter 5, verse 2. And throughout the Gospel of Matthew, you'll see where Matthew specifically interjects something about Jesus and how that fulfills something that the prophets had said. So it's very plain to see, and it's pretty cool to see that this actual person, Matthew, with his history, his occupation, with his the audience that he was writing to, and the reasons why he includes certain things. It just makes it just so real, so fresh, and just even more true, and it helps our faith to really understand that this person, Jesus, the Son of God, 100% man, 100% God, actually walked the earth, and these are the things that he taught. I always like to look at the Bible as a whole, and how does a certain passage or a certain item in the Bible, how does it compare to the overall principle of the Bible? Matthew's identity as a tax collector, it made him marginalized. And you may have caught that when I read the passage in Matthew chapter 9 where it talks about, it's Matthew's introduction, his little bio in the gospel. And when the Pharisees and the religious leaders saw that Jesus was eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they were asking, why is he eating with these people? Matthew was a marginalized person. And being marginalized, it's a person or group treated as insignificant. So Matthew came from a marginalized, he was marginalized from his people. He was collecting taxes for the Roman government against the way they saw it, the way the Jews saw it. They saw that it was someone kind of working for the Roman government against his own country. So he was a marginalized person. I would imagine he suffered some, I would imagine being ostracized by his own people that had a weight on him. But isn't it remarkable that a man with a reputation like Matthew would be chosen to write the gospel that would become the first book of the Bible? But isn't that just like God? It may be your background. It may be that your background is filled with guilt and shame. You may be a target of hatred and rejection. You may think your poor reputation or unsavory history may have excluded you from God's kingdom and placed you beyond his reach. If that's you, if that's what you think, let me respectfully say you're wrong. If Jesus could pick a man like Matthew to walk with him and live as one of his disciples, certainly he can choose the likes of you and me to be part of his family and followers. Whatever your background, whatever your lifestyle in years gone by, God hasn't finished writing your story. He still calls you, and like he did Matthew, to follow him. In the final analysis, all of us whom God has called to himself, we're all undeserving recipients of his mercy. It is nothing we bring that commends us to him. It's all grace, amazing grace. God calls everyone. He wants all to come to him and to come to the realization of his love. And no matter what your background is or who you are, no matter what you've done, if you're a marginalized person or group, if you're not loved by the community around you. But also on the flip side, there's many examples in the New Testament of people who were in power or who were like the Roman centurion. He was really thought highly of God by the mercy and love he was shown to others. Jesus honored the man who said, I understand that you don't even need to come to my house. You can just say the word and my boy will be healed, because I have people in my care and under my authority. So God calls all, the rich, famous, the poor, the people who have a lot of self-doubt, the people who have no self-doubt, the people who are assured, people who, no matter what color of your skin, no matter anything, God sees his creation. He sees you individually, and he loves you, and he calls you to follow him. There's a song that I've been listening to quite a bit here lately to help me in my own life. But I just imagine when Jesus calls Matthew, when he goes to his house and just shares time with him and asks him to follow him, I just imagine that Matthew has this deep sense of love that he senses from Jesus and from God. And I want to share this song with you. Was sung by Kathy Tricoli, probably in the late 80s, early 90s, but I've been listening to it over and over, trying to get this message sunk in my own head. You can never think too much about God's love, and thank God for His love for you, and express your love to God. Just like any relationship, you know, when you get married, or for your parents or children, you always, you know, you say that you love them, and you always rekindle that love every day, and that's kind of what we do with our relationship with God. Hope you like this song. I'll have the words up on the screen, and I'll do the best I can. I died for you. I'd do it all again if I had to show you what you really mean to me. I cried for you. I hung on the cross so you wouldn't have to. I made a way to set your spirit free. That's how much I love you. That's how much I want you. I gave up my whole life that you might live. That's how much I love you. That's how much I want you to see that you are my child, and you mean so much to me. I gave you the stars, the sun and moon, yes I went that far. So no matter where you go, you think of me. The mountains fair, the beautiful oceans are there to remind you that I can satisfy your every need. And that's how much I love you. That's how much I want you. I gave up my whole life that you might live. And that's how much I love you. And that's how much I want you to see that you are my child, and you mean so much to me. And that's how much I love you. That's how much I want you. I gave up my whole life that you might live. And that's how much I love you. And that's how much I want you to see that you are my child, and you mean so much to me. That you are my child, and you mean so much to me. Just as the love expressed to Matthew and the Matthew's willingness to follow Jesus, I just hope that's a good introduction behind who Matthew was and some of the reasons why he wrote the gospel account, and some of the reasons why and how he wrote the gospel account. But yeah, I hope that song blesses your life. I hope you have a good day today. Thanks for watching.